I used to believe that if you raised your children with love, they would never leave you. I held on to that belief the way some people hold on to religion, tightly, desperately, with my whole heart. My son, Daniel, he was always loud, full of plans, full of dreams. A boy who thought the world would always make room for him. And my daughter, Grace, she was the quiet one. Soft voice, gentle hands. The kind of child who would rest her head on my shoulder without saying a word. They were different in so many ways, but they were mine, my whole world. And for a long time, I thought I was theirs too. But life has a way of changing slowly. So slowly you don't notice until it's already happened. After their father passed, the house became quieter. Too quiet. At first, the calls came every few days, then every week, then once a month, and then nothing. No birthdays, no holidays, not even a simple, "How are you, Mom?" Loneliness doesn't arrive like a storm. It arrives like dust, soft, silent, settling into every corner of your life until you're surrounded by it. And I told myself, they're busy. They have their own families, their own lives. I made excuses for them, even when it hurt. But then, one Tuesday morning, after nearly 8 months of silence, the phone rang. First Daniel, then Grace, both of them on the same day. That was the day I learned the difference between love and need. The first call came from my son, Daniel. "Hey, Mom, thought I'd check in. Been a while, huh?" His voice was too cheerful, too bright, like sunlight in a room that had been dark for too long. Unnatural, forced. Daniel has always carried his pride like armor. Even as a child, he wanted the world to believe he was strong, even when he was hurting. I didn't question it. I just listened. When you're a mother, you learn to hear the words hidden behind the words. 2 hours later, the phone rang again. Grace. "Hi, Mom. I've been thinking about you." Her voice was soft. Too soft. The kind of softness people use when they want to step past your guard without being noticed. Grace was always my gentle one, the one who held my hand in grocery aisles, the one who said, "It's okay, Mom. I'll take care of you when I'm grown." Maybe she meant it once. I made tea. I laid out the peach tablecloth she always loved, the one that made the kitchen feel like summer sunlight. When they walked in, they didn't hug each other. They didn't even look at each other. But they both hugged me. And for a moment, just a moment, I let myself believe love had returned. We sat at the table, tea steaming, chairs familiar. But the room felt different. Daniel looked around the house slowly at the furniture, the pictures, not with nostalgia, but calculation. Grace held my hands in hers and said, "Oh, Mom, we worry about you living here all alone. Maybe it's time to let us help." Help. Not visit. Not stay. Not support. Help. Daniel cleared his throat. His voice lowered. "You know, these property taxes are heavy. The house needs repairs. A lot of repairs. We're just thinking of what's best for you." There it was. Concern wrapped neatly around want. Love spoken in the shape of need. And I sat there, smiling softly, pretending I couldn't hear the truth beneath their words. They didn't come because they missed me. They came because they needed something from me. And the hardest part was that they didn't even know that I knew. We sat there for a while, sipping tea in that quiet kitchen. No one spoke about the months they had been gone. No one said, "I'm sorry." No one asked how I'd been managing. Instead, Daniel leaned back in his chair, glanced around the room again, and said, "You know, Mom, this house is too big for you now." His tone was soft, rehearsed, like he had practiced it in the car before walking in. Grace squeezed my hand gently and nodded. Too quickly. Too eagerly. "It's just, we want you to be safe," she said. "A smaller place would be easier, cozy, less for you to worry about." Cozy. That word stung more than it should have. This house was never just wood and paint. It was where I raised them, where we laughed until we cried, where I held them when they were sick, where their father's voice still lived in the walls. I didn't answer. Not yet. Daniel took a breath, a long one. He said, "We could sell it. The market is good right now. You'd make a lot of money. And we could help manage things. You wouldn't have to worry about anything." There it was. Not spoken harshly, not forced, but clear. They didn't come back for me. They came back for the house, for the value, for the inheritance they believed was already theirs. And I sat there, looking at the two people I once carried in my arms, feeling something inside me grow still. Not angry, not shocked, just still, quiet. The kind of quiet that comes when the truth finally settles. I looked at Daniel first. His eyes didn't meet mine. They looked everywhere else. At the walls, the floors, the corners of the room, like he couldn't bear to look at the woman who raised him. And then I looked at Grace. Sweet, gentle Grace. She was still holding my hand, her thumb brushing the back of it in slow, soft circles, the same way she used to do when she was little, whenever she was nervous. I realized then she wasn't comforting me, she was comforting herself. I set my teacup down very quietly. Tell me the truth, I said. My voice didn't shake, my hands didn't tremble. It was just a simple question. Daniel finally looked at me just for a moment. And in that moment, I saw everything. The late bills, the sleepless nights, the pride, the fear, the sinking panic of a life that didn't turn out the way he thought it would. He swallowed hard. Mom, we just think it's the responsible thing to do. Responsible. Another word wrapped in pretty paper. Grace leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper. We don't want to lose the house later, Mom, if something happens. If you... She couldn't finish the sentence. I finished it for her. If I die, I said, then you don't want to deal with it. Grace's hand froze. Daniel looked away again. No one spoke. The silence was heavier than grief, heavier than loneliness. It was the weight of realization. I wasn't their mother in that moment. I was property, assets, value, future inheritance, something to be managed, not loved. And I felt something in my chest tighten, not breaking, not cracking, closing, quietly, firmly, like a door being gently, finally shut. That night, after they went to bed in their old rooms, I walked through the house, room by room. I touched the door frames where I measured their height each year, the floorboard in the hallway that always creaked, the kitchen counter where I taught them how to peel apples. The house was quiet, but it wasn't empty. It was full of memory, full of love, full of the life I gave them. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom, mine and their father's. The lamp on his side of the bed was still there, the old clock still ticking, slow and soft. I sat down on the edge of the bed, and I finally let myself cry. Not loud, not wild, just quiet tears, the kind that fall because your heart is heavy, not because it's breaking. I realized something in that moment. I could lose this house. I could lose these walls. I could lose every photograph and every chair and every chipped teacup. but I could not lose myself. And I could not give my children the lesson that love is something you return to only when you need something. So the next morning, when the sun was gentle and low, I made breakfast. They sat at the kitchen table, still half asleep, still believing the conversation was unfinished. I poured coffee into their cups, and I said very calmly, "I'm not selling this house." No anger, no trembling voice, just truth. Daniel blinked fast, like he didn't hear me right. Grace's smile faltered. I continued, "This home is not a burden. It is not too big. It is not too much work. It is my life, and I will not trade my life for your convenience." No one spoke. The silence felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. But my feet were steady. My voice was steady. My heart was steady. For the first time in a long time.
Daniel stood up first. He didn't shout. He didn't argue. He just stood there, hands on his hips, jaw tight, eyes shining with a frustration he didn't know how to speak. He wasn't angry at me. He was angry at his life, at how far he had fallen from the man he imagined he would become. Grace stayed seated, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes lowered. She looked small, like a child again. But the weight in the room was not small. No one had to say anything. We all knew. The house was not the problem. The problem was the distance between who we once were and who we had become. Daniel finally said, "Okay, if that's what you want." But his voice was different this time. Not confident, not practiced, just tired. Grace whispered, "We just wanted to help." And I believed her. In her own way, she did. But wanting to help and wanting to inherit are two different kinds of love. We all walked outside together. The air was cool. The yard looked the same as it always had. Daniel hugged me. Not tight, just enough. Grace held on longer, her cheek against mine, her tears warm on my skin. Then they left. No slammed doors, no accusations, no dramatic ending, just the quiet closing of a chapter that had already been ending for a long time. When their car disappeared down the road, I stood on the porch, hands wrapped around my coffee cup, and I realized something simple and true. Love doesn't have to be returned to still have been real. I gave them love. I don't regret that. But now I was allowed to love myself too.
The days that followed were quiet. Not the heavy kind of quiet, not the lonely kind, just quiet. I watered the plants, I opened the windows, I let the sunlight touch the rooms again. Sometimes I still think of them. Daniel with his tired pride, Grace with her soft hands and heavy heart. I don't blame them. Life shapes us in ways we don't expect. I was a mother for so long, I forgot that I was also a person, someone allowed to keep something for herself, someone allowed to choose her own peace. I sit on the porch most evenings now, the same porch where I once watched them play, the same porch where I waited for them to come home. And I smile, because love does not disappear. It changes, it grows, it softens. It returns to the places where it was first given. If you have been listening to my story this far, thank you. It means you understand. Maybe you've lived some of this too. Maybe you know what it feels like to give and to lose and to find yourself again. You are not alone here, not anymore. You're welcome to stay for the next story.